Hello, and thank you for joining me. It's been a little while since I last posted a video, so I thought it was about time I did another one. I've been working on something a little different from the projects I've shown you so far, which have mostly been 50mm, 28mm armies. This is a 6mm army for the War of the Spanish Succession. Now, the Twilight of the Sun King rules, in their scenario book, have several battles for the War of the Spanish Succession. And I have started to build up a force so that I can fight some of those. So I'm starting with French, and this is based on the Battle of Blenheim and the French force under the Marquis of Rosal, I think, who was defending Oberglau. Let me show you what I've done so far, and then we can come back and talk about it in a moment. These 5 battalions represent the brigade commanded by the Prince de Isenheim, who was in reserve behind the village of Oberglau. You've got 1 battalion of the Poitou regiment, 1 of Guyenne, 1 of the Prince of Isenheim's own regiment, which was a Walloon regiment, and then 2 battalions of Beauferme at the back there. When I was planning this army, I had to think quite carefully about how I wanted to represent the battalions. The French fought in a deeper formation than the Anglo-Dutch and Imperials, and I wanted to reflect that. And I'd seen some people using blocks of 24, so 3 ranks of 8, but that seemed to me not really to give full flavour to the size of the battalion. So I decided I'd increase that to 3 rows of 10, of which 2 would be flying the standards. And I wanted to use standards that stood out, so slightly bigger than they should be really. But in order to do that, I bought an extra pack of pikemen. I've used the pikemen as the standard bearers. And then I wanted to have the officers standing in front of the battalion. So I put the 3 officer figures there. It gives me what I want to see, really, a sort of a feeling that there's some bulk there, a feeling that there's some depth there, and a feeling that it is being commanded. If I could have fitted it on the base, I might have had a couple of file closers behind as well. I've done that in the past with 7 Years' War Prussians, and I think that kind of makes it look quite good. So alongside this brigade of infantry, I've also started to paint up some cavalry. I haven't finished a complete brigade yet, but so far I've got these 2 units. So these are from Massenbach's brigade that was beside Rosel's corps. Needs to be completed with another 2 squadrons, units, regiments, whatever. I can't remember what they are actually at the moment. I was putting off painting the cavalry a bit. I was a little bit intimidated by painting the horses, but they actually seem to work quite well, and I'm quite pleased with the way they've come out. Again, I didn't want to have a single line of cavalry. I wanted to give it the impression of being a unit that was being led, so I've added in these officer figures and command figures, the trumpeter and the standard bearer, in front of the line. Technically, I think, looking at some of the designs, the standard bearer should actually be in the line, and only an officer and a trumpeter might be in front of the line, but I think this works okay. So alongside these, I've also been building up my terrain. These are from Leven Miniatures, lovely resin houses. It's got a whole range, it's a wonderful range. They paint up really nicely and work very well with the scale. And I started to get these, but they're about sort of £3, £4 each, and it takes a long time to paint up. So I'm always a bit mean, diverting funds away from figures to terrain. And I resent in some ways the time I spend painting these buildings, because I could be painting figures. I know it's silly, but it's just kind of the way I feel at times. So I had a look around, and I found that you can download sort of paper buildings. They're not obviously not as good, but in many ways they really do the job well, and they're free. So they're relatively straightforward to put together. Most of them are three-piece, so a roof, the walls, and then a base to ensure they kind of stay in shape once they've been constructed. And so I've put together about 20 or 30 of the, not quite 30 of these, and I think they really do a good job. I wasn't keen on the colours on the initial downloads. They were a bit bright for my taste, so I imported the downloaded file into GIMP actually, and then changed the colour of the wood and the walls to make them more sort of sober colours, less bright colours. And I'm quite pleased with the results, and when they're on the table I think they will sort of do the job really well. I've also been working on some trees. And I put these together. These are a Wargamers fallback. I've been using this as long as I can remember. These are basically scouring pads. You can buy a pack of 5 of those in Sainsbury's for £1.20, or you can buy a pack of 5 in one of the cheaper discount places. I think I went to Home Bargains for about 40p. And then just sculpt them out of sculpting them from those scouring pads, sticking them on a cocktail stick trunk and affixing to a base. They're pretty effective, I think. So I've built a whole range of those as well. Next task is to find some roads. I've not got a good solution for roads yet, so I need to think about that. If I'm going to do Millennium, clearly I've got a long way to go, and the scenario in the Twilight of the Sun King calls for something like 20 units of infantry, and maybe the same number of cavalry, and the unit is 2 bases, so about 80 bases of figures to be done, and so far I've got 7. So it's a long way off. It's a long-term project, and once I've done the French, I'll have to contemplate doing the Anglo-Dutch, which is roughly the same sort of size. So the overall project is probably going to be something like 160 bases. So it's not going to get done quickly, and I might sort of use the figures for smaller scenarios on the journey to the goal. And of course I'll be distracted, there'll be other things coming on, there'll be nice figures that I want to paint. One of the other projects will suddenly come back into focus, and I might go and get diverted to paint some of those. But there you go, it's now on the table, it's underway, and we'll see how far we get. Anyway, thank you for watching.